Tackle today, Matt and Mark Justice breaking down all of the charts, news, stories, everything going on in the market in a concise manner so that you can know what is going on in the market. Market starting out the month of September on a sour note. A lot of seasonality headlines out there. We talked about this in the Trading Justice podcast released this weekend. Matt, some choppy charts start the week. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, it's like the calendar turned to September, and the market just decided to sell the calendar shifting more so than any of the data out there. But a tough candle to start September here. Two thoughts here. Number one, technically, it's difficult to break out. That's number one. Breaking out can be hard to do, as you can see over the course of the last couple of weeks. We've been consolidating at the top end of the pattern. On Friday, there was an interesting last hour in the day. You had this just liftoff coming into the market, but it could not break out of that 565 level. Actually kind of held firm here at about 564. The futures price action throughout the weekend, the extended weekend, really didn't show too much additional volatility. We didn't break out on the futures, but you did start to see a little bit of selling pressure on Tuesday morning coming into the cash open here. And then obviously as the cash open came out, it was a sell first, ask questions later. And the first three candles down, big down, big down, big down. And you're talking about a 1.5% movement to the downside. Now, the second thought I have here is, again, technically speaking, as the market is going through pattern development, you always want to be prepared for either outcome. Either one, if it does break out, what's your game plan if you do in fact get that confirmation breakout? And number two, where does the market have support that if we start seeing a little bit of selling pressure that you start to look at from, okay, let's see where support can start coming in here. Number one, you obviously have an intraday support level, that we've been tracking in this high base right around the 555 level. Keep an eye on that. As long as that doesn't break, you're still talking about the high base. If that does break, 550 is the number. You got a cluster of moving averages right around 550 on the daily chart. You flip it out to the weekly chart, and that's right where that 9 EMA is as well. So you do got some pretty decent support around 550 as well.
Yeah, I know. And you highlighted this in the Trade Justice podcast over the weekend. I appreciated it. I had a breakout plan, and you're like, yeah, remember, markets can go down. Where's that next point where support can hold? That was well done. And Matt, we're going to have a lot of catalysts this week on the economic side as we go through the week. This is labor market week. We have the non-farms unemployment report on Friday. We have JOLTS tomorrow. We have ADP and unemployment claims. Labor is going to be a big part of the conversation this week. We had a little bit of economic data come out today, but highlighting what's coming on this week. This is a heavy economic data week. Be aware of it. Catalyst every day. Had a little bit of economic data come out today in manufacturing numbers. Now, manufacturing has remained in contraction for the better part of 18 months. Like if you go back and look at the data, we have been in this general range of 46, 47, 48 for 18 months now. You're coming right here in the range today, slightly below expectations, but nothing where we haven't been so far in the last 18 months, is it, man?
No, it's right where we've been for 18 months. My ISM manufacturing data has right been in that range. I don't see that data coming in today too concerning. I just feel like the market didn't break out, and the path of least resistance when the market doesn't break out is down. And that's kind of what, and they got a data point today on a miss where basically you got a reason to sell coming into the market here today. Does it change the pattern? Does it change the conversation? That's the ultimate question as we do navigate this technically. And as of right now, we're still in the pattern, but again, be prepared on the breakout 565 or the retracement to 550.
Yeah, and while we're going through this macro moment in markets, there's always going to be individual stories. One of them on Unity Software, really from a technical perspective, caught my eye. But what are your top stocks in the news stories today?
Yeah, I think the three stocks in the news, and it's a little bit of a slow news day as we are coming through an extended weekend here. But the three stock stories I think are chiefly important here. And number one, U.S. Steel dropping pretty aggressive here today as Kamala Harris as well as President Trump both come out and oppose the deal of selling U.S. Steel to a Japanese steel company. And so obviously a lot of political pressure being put on US Steel right now to sell to an American counterpart. We'll see what that storyline plays out, but obviously US Steel dropping a little bit because the reality of the situation is the bid coming out of Japan is twice as large as the bids coming out of America right now for US Steel. And so obviously US Steel wants to maximize shareholder value, but there's a tremendous amount of political pressure being put on US Steel right now. And so obviously the price is reflecting that. Boeing is down today on a Wells Fargo downgrade, and certainly one I agree with. However, I think they should have cited, abandoning 2 astronauts in space might have had something to do with that as well. And by the way, they didn't abandon them; they just couldn't get them home. And then Unity Software here rallied 6% as Morgan Stanley upgraded the stock, and that's something to keep an eye on. That's the chart you're looking on the screen right now. But let's take a look at these stocks one by one very quickly. When you're looking at US Steel, just a little bit of gap down, does have support around 35, 36. But again, when you're talking about this type of storyline, a buyout, concern over the buyout, just expect a lot of volatility out of US Steel more than anything. When you are looking at Boeing here, Boeing had a little bit of gap down, but they also have a very challenging environment, both from a fundamental perspective as well as from a technical perspective. Just had a horrible earnings report, and then the news getting the downgrade and the astronauts and everything, just a very tough environment. And then when you look at this technically, just an absolute nightmare of a technical challenging with a potential violation of that 160 level, and it does not have support until 120. That is a nasty potential violation for Boeing. And then on the positive side, Unity Software gets an upgrade, and it's going through a pretty decent reversal with a really good resistance level right around $18 as well. It's on top of its short-term moving averages, which are now acting as support. Now we're just looking for the ultimate confirmation of a short-term reversal.
Yeah, that's a really nice head and shoulders reversal pattern there on that. Commodities, as we start the week, under pressure in a lot of the corners of the commodity market, along with equities themselves. It feels like this is going to provide some buying opportunities in commodities. I'm not going to lie, if we get pattern development, but we also need that dollar chart most likely to slow down. And I like how you highlighted that first, because as a currency guy, as a commodity guy myself, this chart, if you stall here and then start going down, that's going to bode very well for reversal or new patterns in commodities, isn't it?
100%. And this is the number one chart in commodities. And I know we're talking about the
No,
dollar.
yeah, and I love where you started, because that's the chart.
It's
That's the chart to start the week.
Nothing bottoms out in the commodity space until we see this retracement, whether or not it confirms to the downside or whether or not we start talking about a bear stop out type situation, and which would put a lot of pressure on commodities, quite frankly. And so you got to be prepared for that. And number one, this 102 level, right where the 20 period moving average is going to be a really important zone. And then you're right in that little tiny pocket between the rising 9 and the falling 20 here. And so what you want to see, quite frankly, is you just want to see the creation of a pivot and a downward movement in price with confirmation underneath the 9 EMA. And if you get that in this bearish retracement, then you got something to talk about when you're talking about the selling behavior that's happening in silver, the selling behavior that's happening in copper, the selling behavior that's happening in gold here today. And by the way, the first couple weeks in September, historically, from a seasonality perspective, is where the biggest damage is in the marketplace. You typically start bottoming out before September ends, actually. And so knowing these markets, they like to price things in fairly aggressively. Typically, commodities have worse seasonality in September than equities do, and they are showing it a little bit here today. But again, I do think we're having a dollar conversation more than we're having a seasonality conversation. I just so happen to think that a little bit of this volatility just happens to be as the calendar turns into September, but it is the dollar chart that is the most important here. So keep an eye on that dollar, keep an eye on that potential pivot around 102.
Listen, we are going to scout out those opportunities. We're going to continue the conversation. We're going to talk about Unity, potential reversal. We're going to break it all down in our Traders Lounge like we do every day with our pro members. It's a fantastic community. Go to tackletrading.com, sign up for that 15-day free trial, see what it's all about.